Finally, DC gets it right. Am I a huge dork? Yes, I am. Hello there, interwebs. I hope you're doing well, and welcome to Jessie Recommends, a series on this channel where I'm just a huge freaking dork, and also I share some of the TV, movies, pieces of media that I really love and that meant a lot to me, and I want to share it with all of you. And if you hadn't guessed it from me being a giant dork, I am, or the thumbnail that you probably clicked on at the top of this video, or the title down there, there are numerous things that give away, or the shirt. I'm just telling everything away. Anyways, if you hadn't guessed, I am reviewing Superman and Lois, the new CW superhero DC comic show over on the CW. I think I said CW twice there. Anywho, for those of you who don't know, I am a huge DC Comics fan. I adore DC Comics. Like, Marvel I love, and I think Marvel generally has been kicking it out of the park with all of their movies and things like that. But DC fandom is just something that is so core to my experience. I love DC. I love the characters. I'm sort of 50-50 on a lot of the movies, but I just love the world of DC. I mean, half of my collectibles back here. I mean, you got my gal Harley and Supergirl over there. And all the Green Lantern rings. I'm just a big DC fan, and because of that, because I love that universe, I generally watch pretty much every single major DC release and TV show, and I've generally enjoyed them to varying degrees for the most part, especially on the TV side. But when it came to the CW, while I've enjoyed the CW shows for the most part, I've generally kind of been tapering off of them these past few years. They've kind of become a little bit trite and right, especially as each show goes on. I think the only one that I'm really enjoying anymore at this point is Legends of Tomorrow. Everything else has kind of become very formulaic and kind of similar-y to me. So I was kind of nervous when I heard that the CW is going to be doing a Superman show. Now, don't get me wrong. I love Tyler Hoechlin. I've been following Tyler Hoechlin from his Teen Wolf days, his sexy Teen Wolf days. Sorry, flashback to pre-coming out Jessie, who had a lot of feelings for guys that she couldn't express at that time that kind of came out in Teen Wolf. Anyways, Tyler Hoechlin was a great Superman in the Crisis on Infinite Earths crossovers and the few other times that he appeared in Supergirl, but I was kind of nervous going into this Superman and Lois show because I was kind of worried that, it was just going to be kind of another superhero CW formulaic show where it was kind of glossy, kind of quick, kind of formulaic and rote, and it wasn't really going to do anything new in that sort of CW superhero world. And boy, I am so excited that I was completely wrong with Superman and Lois, because this show is a knock out of the park. Now, there are some things that I don't particularly love with this premiere, but I think that this is a bold move for DC and something that I am very excited to see going forward, because it is something completely new for Superman, and yet actually puts itself in direct conversation with the Superman versions of Superman that have been coming out these past few years that many people have been found very controversial, especially the Zack Snyder Superman. What do I mean by that? Well, Superman and Lois is putting itself in direct conversation with Zack Snyder's Superman, specifically with the movie Man of Steel. I was kind of worried when I saw the trailer for this show that it was so muted colors. It kind of had that sort of dour palette that the Zack Snyder show was having. I'm like, oh no, are they going to have that sort of nihilistic thing that Zack Snyder has? Because my problem with Man of Steel, while I liked Henry Cavill, and I don't hate Man of Steel like a few other people do, the problem I had with it, besides some of the structural stuff in that movie, is just that it's just had this nihilistic tone all the way through. And that can be fine, but you have to vary that a little bit, especially with Superman, who is a character about bringing optimism to the world. But that movie never really varied from that very nihilistic tone. Superman and Lois puts itself in direct comparison with that movie, not just stylistically. And by the way, this show does not look like a CW show. They definitely put some budget in the stuff. It looks gorgeous, even in that sort of muted color palette, as opposed to sort of the bright, vibrant colors of the other CW stuff. In fact, it honestly brings that cinematic feel to it more because of that muted color palette, even though I'm not a huge fan of the muted color palette as a whole. It works here. But I think that also sort of mirrors the tone that this show is going for and kind of captures better what I think Man of Steel should have done, in that this show is very much set in a much more nihilistic world than the rest of the CW shows, which are kind of bright and optimistic on the whole. This world, you see Superman he's cut from his job at the Daily Planet at the beginning of this. There's conversations about like social issues and sort of the sort of rural versus urban brought up in this episode when Superman goes back to visit Smallville. And small spoilers here, we get to see the death of some prominent characters in the Superman mythos right at the beginning of the show, and also other parts of this. So there is a dour sense throughout the whole episode, and yet Superman, played by Tyler Hoechlin, brings this like earnest optimism into this sort of dour nihilistic world, and that is exactly what I want this tone of Superman to be. If you're Superman, if you want to have sort of that dark and gritty Superman, I think if you do that, you have to have him bring the optimism into the world. He has to be that bright, shining, inspiring figure into a sort of darker, more realistic world. He has to be so that bright, shining star, and this show does it right from the first scene that we see Superman in. It's a wonderful call out to Superman's first appearance in Action Comics, that cover where he's holding up the car. Tyler Hoechlin comes in wearing that old costume, recreates the pose, and someone says, "Nice costume." He says, "Yes, my mother made it for me." So adorably geeky and wonderful, and Tyler Hoechlin just plays it so perfectly, and I was just so happy right from the get-go. But the other thing that I really love about this take on Superman is that it's not doing the same type of Superman show that we've seen a billion times before. It's like, all right, Superman's married. Like, we already had Lois and Clark, where Superman was married to Lois and sort of had to deal with the ins and outs of being a married couple. We've seen so many Superman shows where Superman's just sort of like being Superman and maybe romancing Lois. No, here Superman and Lois are a long-standing couple. They've been married for years, and they actually have kids. This is kind of being based off of the Rebirth comics, where Superman has a child there, and I loved Superman's kid, who eventually became Superboy in that sort of canon of the comics, and I've loved that take on him. Here they even do something different from that, in that he's the parents of 2 children, both kind of having their own emotional issues, and Superman does not entirely know how to be a perfect father. There's this argument that he's having with Lois about whether he should even tell them that they are descended from Superman, and that is such a dynamic that I've never seen in a Superman show before, and you see him wrestling with being a father figure to them as a whole. And so I love that sort of new dynamic. This gets into one of my criticisms of the show, in that I don't particularly love the child characters yet. They come across a little bit in that kind of a little bit petulant children kind of mode, which is like sort of a hard balance to find with a lot of child characters, especially teen characters in shows. When you have sort of teen characters, they can come across as very like petulant, like, man, I don't get my way. And you get a little bit of that here, but it's a little bit more understandable. I like that the show is sort of addressing that one of Superman's children is actually diagnosed with a sort of a mental health issues and sort of an anxiety disorder. I forget the exact thing that they call out in the show, but he does have some issues that have actually, that they need to go to a therapist for, and I like that it's calling that out, and so that's a good thing. But both children kind of come across as a little bit petulant and snarky, and I don't particularly love that, but I am willing to give them time to sort of see how they grow. They are brand new characters. Like, everyone knows Lois, everyone knows how to write Superman. So these are new characters, and I'm willing to give the show time to breathe in that, because I am so appreciative of the dynamic that they bring to this show. On top of that, Lois is absolutely fantastic in this series too. As with every best version of Lois Lane is like strong-willed. She leaps out of the screen. She has almost more personality. In fact, she does have more personality than Superman himself, as well she should. I mean, Superman's meant to be more of a symbolic character. Lois is meant to be a sort of realistic, journalistic lady who sort of like actually makes us connect with a human being on the show. And she has just played so wonderfully and written so wonderfully throughout the show. So generally on all those fronts, I think all of this is excellent. I also love the sort of status quo that they set up for the end of this episode. I kind of spoilers here going into this final bit of the pilot that I'm reviewing here. Superman decides to move back to Smallville with Lois and his family to sort of like try and rebuild and find his more rural roots and kind of trace back to that sort of familiarity with sort of growing up in a small farm town, which I think is really, really great. I mean, they always talk about in Superman shows that he's this small farm boy growing up on the farm that moved to the big city. Is like, oh shucks. But I think today, there's this big sort of divide in, the United States, that this sort of talk about like, oh, there's like the urban lefts and the sort of rural right, and there's sort of this split between the two. And not to like get overly political about it, as like the left versus the right, but there is that sort of like view within our society of the urban versus rural. And I think like bring Superman back to a sort of rural setting kind of can help bridge that divide in a sort of symbolic way within the show, sort of have those conversations about like, how do we find our shared humanity and connect with each other through this like seeming like division that really is just kind of made up anyways. Like, yes, there are differences between, living in a city and living in a rural area. As someone who grew up in a rural area myself and moved to the city, I know that feeling very hard, but I know that those divisions are mostly kind of symbolic and when you get to know people, and that this episode starts to show that. And I think that status quo really has me excited for what they can do with this show. And so I'm kind of excited to see where that goes as well. I think if they walk that balance really well, I think they can make a show that really kind of speaks across those lines. I already know that there are probably people out there on YouTube is like, oh, this show sucks, and it's that conversation has already started happening. But I really think that this show has a chance to kind of eschew that, and it just has me so excited for seeing this version of Superman today, because ultimately that is why I am so enthusiastic about just off of the pilot, why I'm so excited to give this show my recommendation, because it doesn't necessarily feel like that rote CW show, which has kind of gotten a little bit tired and formulaic. This show feels like it has the chance to say something with Superman that I've been wanting them to say for a while. Love or hate Zack Snyder, I particularly find Zack Snyder's movies to be like fascinating, but I don't love them because of that sort of nihilistic take on Superman. I feel like this show is sort of taking that kernel of what Zack Snyder did with Henry Cavill's Superman and kind of, I think, might be able to, it has the potential, I mean, this is just the first episode, but it has the potential to do more and say more with the Superman character in a way that I think actually will speak to today. We kind of get this thing as like, oh yeah, superheroes need to be gritty today, or at least DC does, because it feels like gritty is doing something different from Marvel and speaks to like the dark, hard world. I think you can do a sort of darker and grittier take on superhero stories in sort of contrast to Marvel to sort of differentiate yourself. But if you take that route, the superhero character still has to bring that optimism. So if you set him in this darker world, have him bring that optimism, have him say something about the world today. And I think that this version of Superman, Tyler Hoechlin's versions of Superman, has that potential. And I am even more shocked that I am so enthusiastic and excited about that through a CW show. Again, this is someone who likes the CW shows. I watch every single episode of The Flash, Supergirl, Batwoman, Legends of Tomorrow, all that stuff. This show is the one that has me the most excited. And I was not expecting that, especially coming off of like Supergirl, which I think is one of the stronger CW shows, one that I've really loved, and the fact that it's getting canceled, kind of presumably for this show, because they don't want to have two Superman shows going on. I'm just kind of sad that we were losing a female superhero for the male one, which is what it is. Superman's obviously more popular. I don't want to necessarily frame it in that way, but it kind of is how it feels. So I was a little bit disappointed in that because I feel like we do need more female superhero representation. So even despite all that going against it, me going into the show, with the only thing that I was excited about being that Tyler Hoechlin, the sexy Tyler Hoechlin was doing this, having that makes me so pumped for this show. And that is why I'm giving it just off the pilot. I haven't seen the rest of the show, but just off the pilot, I'm giving this a huge recommend because I think that this show has the potential to do something new with Superman, and I'm very excited to see what they do with it. Maybe they'll screw it up, but I am very excited. But I'd love to hear your thoughts. Are you excited about Superman and Lois? I'd love to hear all that down in the comments below. Don't forget to subscribe to this channel for more discussions of geek and pop culture and how it connects to making us better human beings. That's all right here on this channel. I also have a Patreon page if you want to get stuff early, get your names in videos, and want to just support me being the weird dork that I am, because that really means a lot, and I am trying to do this full time, so supporting me over on Patreon really does help with that. But beyond all of that, I hope that you, as always, live long and prosper. Patrons, you are my patrons. You are so awesome. So here are your names. Catherine Lambeth, Eli Berg Moss, Ashley Allen, Bo Kikio, Miranda Janelle, Ashlyn Solstice, Greg Gillum, Stephen Kleinard, Camille T, Randy Thompson, Stephen Schuhart, Boyd Earl, and Mary Beth Earl, Wellington Marcus, Wayne Twitchell, Rick Osborne, Roar, Ish the Mad, Piston Twisted Garage, Dominic Noble, Buttoneer, John Steele, Michael Beam, Gavin Robinson, Carmen Olson, William Stewart, Amanda Ronya, Hannah F., Nathan Olson, Andrew Jorgensen, BBD, Jason Knott, Maeve, saying it twice because I can, Andrew K., Bree Beecher, Jasmine, Nathan Steele, Skylar Gray, Lily, Tiffany Danger, Sean Piper, Wen Dizzle Bizzle, Bush, Jane Packard, Geek Filter, Mari Neckard, Jacob Tovar, Polymenia, Celestial Dawn, Jean Mithune, Sarah Bystam Din, Mark the Edge, Corey Honkinen, and Vale the Pale Dunn, Lysa, W. Randy Eady, Andrew Lamoureux, Zone 1 Librarian, and finally, Michael Hardy. I am sorry for that, but seriously, thank you so much, patrons. You really mean the world to me, and you really are changing my life, even if I may have changed your life for the worst with my singing. Thank you so much for all of your support.